Captain Jake Hotshot Murphy stared at the distress beacon flashing on his console and sighed. Another Tuesday, another alien species in mortal peril. "All right, crew, looks like the Zephyrians are having what I can only assume is a very bad day," Murphy announced to his bridge crew aboard the rescue vessel Helping Hand. "Rosa, how's our fleet looking?" Chief Engineer Rosa Wrench Martinez looked up from her console where she'd been having what appeared to be a heated argument with the ship's computer. "Well, Captain, the good news is I convinced the engines to keep running. The bad news is they're doing it under protest. As for the fleet, we've got 12 rescue ships, enough medical supplies to patch up a small war, and Tommy's been practicing his Zephyrian for 3 weeks." The communications officer Tommy Static Park practically bounced in his seat. "I can now say hello. We are here to help in 17 different Zephyrian dialects. Also, please stop shooting, which I really hope we don't need." "That's oddly ominous," muttered Dr. Blake Patch Williams from his medical station, downing what had to be his 5th coffee of the shift. "In my experience, when Tommy learns how to say stop shooting in an alien language, we inevitably need it." Murphy pulled up the tactical display showing their destination. The Zephyrian colony of New Serenity had sent out a standard distress call 3 hours ago. Raiders, probably. The Zephyrians were peaceful to a fault, which unfortunately made them targets for every 2-bit pirate gang in the sector. "Eta 15 minutes, people. Rosa, I need those engines purring like happy kittens. Tommy, get me a comm channel to New Serenity. Patch. Prep the medical bay and try to cut back on the stimulants." "The coffee is medicinal," Dr. Williams protested. "I'm conducting important research on the effects of caffeine on human reaction times during crisis situations." "You're conducting research on how to vibrate through solid matter," Rosa shot back. The Helping Hand dropped out of hyperspace with 11 other rescue vessels, and Murphy immediately knew this wasn't going to be a standard rescue operation. New Serenity was burning. "Captain," Tommy's voice had lost its usual enthusiasm, "I'm detecting multiple unknown vessels in orbit. They're big, and they're shooting at the colony." Murphy's tactical display lit up with contacts. 12 massive warships, angular and bristling with weapons, were systematically bombarding the peaceful Zephyrian settlement below. "Well," Murphy said. This escalated quickly. "Tommy, hail those ships. Let them know we're a rescue fleet, and ask them politely to stop blowing up our friends." Tommy worked his console frantically. "Captain, they're responding. Audio only, and they don't sound happy." The bridge filled with a harsh, guttural voice speaking through universal translators. "Primitive human vessels, you will withdraw immediately. This system is now under Korthak Empire dominion. Your interference will not be tolerated." Murphy looked around his bridge. Rosa was glaring at her console like it had personally insulted her mother. Tommy was nervously adjusting his headset. Dr. Williams had stopped drinking coffee, which was genuinely concerning. "Korthaks," Murphy said slowly. "Well, that's just fantastic. The galaxy's most charming example of militant superiority complex syndrome." The Korthak voice continued, "You have 30 seconds to retreat, or you will be destroyed along with these worthless Zephyrian weaklings." Murphy stood up from his captain's chair and straightened his uniform. "Tommy, open a channel to all Korthak vessels." "Channel open, sir." Murphy cleared his throat. "This is Captain Jake Murphy of the Earth Rescue Fleet. We're here to help the Zephyrians, and we'd really appreciate it if you'd stop shooting at them. We're not looking for a fight." The response was immediate. Weapons fire. 3 plasma bolts slammed into the Helping Hand's shields, and Murphy felt his ship rock under the impact. "Well," he said, gripping his chair as sparks flew from a nearby console, "I guess diplomacy is off the table. Rosa, please tell me our rescue equipment is feeling cooperative today." Rosa's grin was distinctly predatory. "Oh, Captain, the mining lasers are feeling very helpful right about now. And I may have made some modifications to our tractor beams that violate several galactic safety protocols." "Excellent. Tommy, patch me through to the fleet. All vessels. This is Murphy. Looks like we're switching from rescue operation to aggressive negotiations. Remember, people, We're still technically a rescue fleet. We're just rescuing with extreme prejudice. The Korthak attack had just made the biggest mistake in their species' recent history. They'd attacked a human rescue fleet, and humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, took their rescue duties very seriously. The space battle that followed would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy, though most professors would struggle to classify it as actual military doctrine. Captain Murphy's rescue fleet responded to the Korthak attack with what could generously be called creative interpretations of rescue protocols. Rosa Murphy called out as another plasma barrage rocked the ship, "I need those mining lasers online." And when I say mining lasers, I mean the kind that can accidentally drill through starship hulls. "Way ahead of you, Captain," Rosa replied, her fingers dancing across her console. "I've been wanting to test my theory about recalibrating industrial equipment for alternative applications. The computer keeps telling me it's unsafe, but the computer also thought pineapple pizza was impossible, so what does it know?" The helping hand pivoted and unleashed a concentrated beam that had been designed to break up asteroids. The Korthak vessel it struck discovered that their shields, while excellent against military-grade weapons, had not been designed to handle mining equipment operated by an engineer having creative differences with physics. "Direct hit," Tommy announced, then paused. "Captain, I'm getting some interesting chatter from the Korthak vessels. They seem confused about our weapon signatures." "Confused how?" "Well, their tactical officer just asked his commander why we're shooting them with construction equipment." Dr. Williams looked up from his medical station where he'd been preparing trauma kits. "Technically, we are shooting them with construction equipment. Rosa modified mining gear, Tommy's jamming their communications with what I can only describe as auditory chaos, and I'm pretty sure our tractor beams weren't designed to grab enemy ships and shake them like maracas." As if summoned by his words, the helping hand locked onto a Korthak fighter with its tractor beam. Rosa, in a moment of inspiration, began rapidly cycling the beam's polarity. "Rosa, what are you doing to that ship?" "I'm giving it a very thorough structural stress test, to make sure it's safe for the pilot." The Korthak fighter spun helplessly in space, its pilot probably wondering what he'd done to deserve this particular form of motion sickness. Tommy's console erupted in alien chatter. "Captain, I'm intercepting Korthak communications. They're asking each other what humans actually are. What's their current theory? Something about deranged maintenance workers with military equipment. Also, one of their captains just requested clarification on whether humans are technically classified as a warrior species or a hazard to navigation." Murphy couldn't help but grin. "Tommy, patch me through to their command frequency." "You're connected, sir." "Attention Korthak vessels. This is Captain Murphy again. We're still a rescue fleet. We're still here to help the Zephyrians, and we'd still really prefer if you stopped shooting at us. However, if you insist on continuing this aggressive negotiation, please be aware that we have 11 more ships full of very helpful humans with very creative interpretations of rescue equipment." The response came from what was presumably the Korthak admiral. "Primitive humans, your crude weapons cannot match Korthak superiority. We have conquered 17 star systems with our advanced military technology." "That's nice," Murphy replied. "Rosa, show them what our garbage disposal can do when properly motivated." The helping hand fired what had originally been designed as a waste processing beam. The Korthak ship it struck experienced what could only be described as aggressive recycling. Tommy was practically giggling at his station. "Captain, their admiral just asked his tactical officer why their ship is being attacked by janitorial equipment." Dr. Williams had moved to the bridge's medical scanner, which he'd apparently reconfigured to analyze alien biology. "Captain, I'm detecting some interesting physiological responses from the Korthak crews. Elevated stress hormones, increased heart rates, and what appears to be species-specific confusion markers. They're getting stressed. They're getting very stressed. I don't think they've ever encountered opponents who treat warfare like a particularly aggressive home improvement project." The battle continued for another 20 minutes, with human rescue ships systematically dismantling Korthak military doctrine using equipment designed for asteroid mining, deep space construction, and emergency medical response. Rosa had somehow weaponized their emergency beacon. Tommy was broadcasting what he cheerfully called psychological audio warfare, but what sounded suspiciously like death metal. And Dr. Williams was providing running medical commentary on alien anatomy under stress. Finally, the Korthak fleet began to withdraw, but not before their admiral transmitted one final message. "This is Admiral Vextar of the Korthak Empire. Humans, you have interfered with Korthak expansion for the last time. Your primitive tactics may have succeeded today, but the Empire will return with overwhelming force. We will destroy your pathetic rescue efforts and eliminate your species from this sector of space." The transmission cut off, leaving Murphy's bridge in relative quiet. "Well," Murphy said, "that sounded ominous. Tommy, get me a channel to Earth Defense Command. I have a feeling they're going to want to hear about this." General Patricia Iron Fist Rodriguez was having what had started as a pleasant morning in Earth Defense Command until her aide rushed in with a priority transmission from the World Outer Colonies. "General, we've got an incident report from Captain Murphy's rescue fleet in the Zephyrian system." Rodriguez looked up from her morning briefing, which had been pleasantly boring up until that moment. "What kind of incident? Please tell me Murphy didn't accidentally start another diplomatic crisis by being too helpful." "Well, ma'am, he did start something, but I'm not sure diplomatic crisis covers it." The aide handed her a data pad. Rodriguez read Murphy's after-action report with growing concern that slowly transformed into something that might have been amusement if she'd been a different kind of general. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said slowly. "Murphy's rescue fleet responded to a Zephyrian distress call, found them under attack by the Korthak Empire, attempted diplomacy, got shot at, and then proceeded to defeat a Korthak military fleet using mining equipment and what Murphy describes as aggressive customer service." "That's the summary, yes, ma'am." Captain Murphy also notes that Chief Engineer Martinez may have violated several galactic safety protocols. A communications officer Park conducted what he calls psychological warfare through cultural exchange. And Dr. Williams collected biological data on Korthak stress responses for his research. Rodriguez set down the data pad and rubbed her temples, and the Korthaks threatened to return with overwhelming force to eliminate our rescue operations. "Yes, ma'am. Admiral Vextar was quite specific about destroying human interference in the sector. Send for Admiral Thompson, Dr. Vasquez, and Colonel Anderson. We're going to need their expertise." 30 minutes later, Rodriguez found herself in a secure briefing room with Earth's most interesting military minds. Admiral Marcus Bulldog Thompson was a career military officer who'd spent 40 years learning creative ways to solve problems that involved other people shooting at him. Dr. Elena Brain Vasquez was a xenobiologist who'd made studying alien species her life's work, particularly their weaknesses. Colonel Rex Boom Anderson was an explosives expert whose enthusiasm for his job concerned even his closest friends. "Gentlemen," Dr. Rodriguez began, "we have a situation. The Korthak Empire has declared war on our rescue operations." Admiral Thompson leaned back in his chair. "The Korthaks are militaristic, hierarchical, and have a superiority complex the size of their home system. They've been expanding through this sector for the past decade, conquering anyone who can't fight back." Dr. Vasquez was already pulling up her files on Korthak biology, fascinating species from a research standpoint. Highly aggressive, excellent military organization, and they've built their entire culture around conquest and dominance. They view diplomacy as weakness and compromise as surrender. Colonel Anderson looked genuinely excited, and they threatened our rescue fleet, our guys who go out there to help people. "They did more than threaten," Rodriguez said. "They attacked first, took prisoners, and promised to eliminate human presence in the sector." The room fell silent for a moment. Admiral Thompson was the first to speak. "General, with respect, the Korthaks just made a very serious mistake." Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. "They attacked our rescue workers, our people who go into danger specifically to help others." Colonel Anderson's grin was starting to concern everyone in the room. They don't know us very well, do they? Rodriguez's comm unit chimed with an incoming priority message. General Rodriguez, this is Galactic Council Representative Zerkan. We have received reports of an incident between human and Korthak forces. The Council strongly advises Earth to avoid escalation. The Korthak Empire is a recognized military power, and humanity should focus on diplomatic solutions rather than military confrontation. Rodriguez looked around the room at her officers. Thompson's expression had gone from professional to personally offended. Dr. Vasquez was quietly accessing her research files with the focus of someone about to solve a particularly interesting puzzle. Colonel Anderson appeared to be calculating explosive yields in his head. Representative Zerkan, Rodriguez replied, please inform the Galactic Council that Earth appreciates their concern. However, the Korthak Empire attacked our rescue fleet while they were attempting to save civilian lives. This is not a diplomatic matter. General Rodriguez, the Council urges restraint. Humanity is still relatively new to galactic politics, and the Korthak Empire has significant military capabilities. Rodriguez stood up and walked to the large display showing the galactic map. The Korthak Empire controlled a significant portion of the Outer Rim, with their territory marked in aggressive red. Representative. She said quietly. Please tell the Galactic Council that they're about to see exactly why humanity spent 4 billion years clawing its way to the top of Earth's food chain. The Korthaks want to see primitive. Let's show them what 4 billion years of evolution's dark side looks like. She cut the transmission and turned back to her officers. Admiral Thompson, I want a fleet assembled, but not our standard military deployment. Dr. Vasquez, I need everything you know about Korthak biology, psychology. Colonel Anderson, I want you to think creatively about non-lethal solutions to the Korthak problem. Thompson raised an eyebrow. Non-lethal, General? We're not conquerors, Admiral. We're problem solvers. The Korthaks think they understand warfare, but they've never encountered opponents who treat combat like a particularly aggressive form of customer service. Rodriguez walked back to her desk and activated the general alert system. All stations. This is General Rodriguez. The Korthak Empire has declared war on Earth's rescue operations. They attacked our people while they were trying to save lives. This will not stand. Begin mobilization of Operation Helpful Intervention. As her officers filed out to begin preparations, Rodriguez looked once more at the galactic map. The Korthaks controlled 17 star systems and had built their reputation on military conquest. They were about to learn why humanity was the only species that had ever looked at wolves and decided to make them pets. Admiral Vex-Tar of the Korthak Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the dominant Fang, broadcasting to every inhabited system in the sector. His message was intended to establish Korthak superiority and warn other species about interfering with their expansion. Beings of the galaxy, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The Korthak Empire addresses you. Today we encountered the species known as humans attempting to interfere with our rightful conquest of the Zephyrian system. Behind him, a display showed captured human rescue workers from Murphy's fleet, looking surprisingly calm for people being used as propaganda tools. These primitive beings, barely evolved from their homeworld's surface, dared to challenge Korthak military superiority with crude mining equipment and construction tools. But their pathetic rescue fleet has been scattered. And these specimens will serve as examples of what happens to those who oppose the Empire. One of the captured humans, an engineer from the Helping Hand sister ship, looked directly at the camera. You know, for superior beings, you guys have terrible interior decorating. Also, your artificial gravity is miscalibrated by about 3%. It's giving everyone motion sickness. Admiral Vex-Tar gestured dismissively. As you can see, these creatures lack even basic understanding of their situation. The human species will be eliminated from this sector, and their foolish rescue operations will cease permanently. The Korthak Empire claims dominion over all systems within our expanding territory. The broadcast continued for another 10 minutes, with Vex-Tar detailing Korthak military might and their plans for galactic domination. It was, by Korthak standards, a perfectly executed demonstration of power. Unfortunately for the Korthaks, humans had been monitoring the broadcast. 3 days after Vextar's galactic announcement, Admiral Thompson's fleet arrived at the edge of Korthak space. To Korthak sensors, it appeared to be a standard human military deployment. 12 ships, reasonable size, carrying what appeared to be conventional weapons and defensive systems. Admiral Vextar reviewed the sensor data from his command center on the Korthak military world of Destructor Prime. Tactical assessment, he commanded. His subordinate, Commander Krex Val, consulted his instruments. Admiral, the human fleet consists of 12 vessels, approximately equivalent to our standard patrol group. Their weapon signatures suggest primitive projectile weapons and basic energy systems. No significant threat to our defenses. Vextar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Excellent. The humans have sent their military to face us directly, abandoning their cowardly rescue pretense. This will demonstrate to the galaxy that Korthak military doctrine is superior to human desperation. What Admiral Vextar didn't know was that Admiral Thompson's fleet included Dr. Vasquez's mobile research laboratory, Colonel Anderson's non-lethal solutions workshop, and a crew roster that read like a comprehensive guide to humanity's most creative problem solvers. Dr. Vasquez was in her lab, reviewing 3 days of intensive research into Korthak biology and psychology. Admiral, she called over the con. I've completed my analysis of Korthak physiological and psychological profiles. They have some very interesting vulnerabilities. What kind of vulnerabilities, Doctor? Well, their hierarchical social structure makes them extremely susceptible to authority disruption. Their auditory systems are sensitive to specific frequency ranges that don't affect most species, and their military doctrine is so rigid that they have trouble adapting to unconventional tactics. Admiral Thompson nodded from his command chair. In other words, they're bullies who fold when someone doesn't follow their script. That's a very succinct way to put it, yes. Colonel Anderson's voice came over the comm from his workshop. Admiral, I've finished preparing our non-lethal pacification systems. I've got some ideas that should resolve the Korthak problem without permanent damage. Define non-lethal, Colonel. Well, nobody will die. They might need therapy afterward, but that's what counselors are for. Thompson looked at his tactical display showing the approaching Korthak fleet. 47 warships, moving in perfect formation, following centuries-old Korthak military doctrine. All ships. This is Admiral Thompson. Remember, we're here to solve a problem, not start a war. The Korthaks attacked our rescue workers, and we're going to explain why that was a mistake. Try to keep the permanent damage to a minimum. The human fleet adjusted course toward the largest concentration of Korthak forces, and Admiral Vextar prepared to demonstrate the superiority of his military machine. He was about to learn that humans approached warfare the same way they approached everything else, with creative problem-solving, stubborn determination, and a complete disregard for how things were supposed to work. The Korthak Empire had attacked Earth's rescue fleet, threatened to eliminate human presence in the sector, and broadcast their intentions to the galaxy. They were about to discover why humanity was the only species that had ever survived being the galaxy's newest arrival. The battle began exactly as Admiral Vextar expected. The human fleet approached in what appeared to be standard military formation, and his 47 warships prepared to demonstrate the superiority of Korthak tactical doctrine. What happened next would be studied by xenobiologists for generations. Admiral Thompson's flagship, the Problem Solver, opened communications on all Korthak frequencies. Admiral Vextar, this is Admiral Thompson of the Earth Defense Fleet. You attacked our rescue workers and threatened our people. We're here to discuss this situation with you. Vextar's response was immediate and predictable. Primitive humans, you face the might of the Korthak Empire. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. I appreciate the offer, Thompson replied, but we're going to have to decline. Dr. Vasquez, would you like to begin the cultural exchange program? Dr. Vasquez activated her specially modified communications array, which began broadcasting on frequencies specifically calibrated to Korthak auditory systems. What she transmitted wasn't harmful, exactly, but it was the complete discography of human death metal, played at frequencies that bypassed Korthak cognitive filters and went straight to their involuntary stress responses. The effect was immediate. Across the Korthak fleet, crew members began experiencing what could only be described as involuntary emotional responses to music they had no cultural context for understanding. Commander Krexval looked up from his sensor station in confusion. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual audio transmissions from the human fleet. They appear to be singing, but it's causing crew-wide anxiety responses." "Singing?" Vextar demanded. "They're attacking us with music." "It appears so, sir. Also, our formation is beginning to drift. The helmsman reports difficulty concentrating." Admiral Thompson's voice came over the con again. "Admiral Vextar, that's just our opening act. Colonel Anderson, would you care to demonstrate our non-lethal pacification technology?" Colonel Anderson had spent 3 days developing what he called aggressive problem resolution tools. His first deployment was a device he'd originally designed for asteroid mining but had recalibrated for what he termed structural motivation adjustment. The problem solver fired a beam that struck the lead Korthak warship. The beam didn't damage the ship's hull or systems, but it did something far more psychologically devastating. It began rearranging the ship's internal artificial gravity in patterns that spelled out hello in Morse code. The Korthak crew experienced their own ship gently but insistently rearranging itself around them, creating gravity wells that guided them through corridors that spelled out human greetings. "What is happening to my ship?" Vextar demanded. "Sir," his engineering officer reported, "the humans appear to have redecorated our internal gravity matrix. The crew is being politely but firmly directed to the recreational areas. They're redecorating our ship." "Yes, sir." With extreme prejudice. Dr. Vasquez had moved on to the second phase of her cultural exchange program, broadcasting human comedy routines directly into Korthak translation systems. The problem was that Korthak humor was based on dominance and conquest, while human humor relied heavily on self-deprecation and absurdity. The result was 47 ships full of Korthak warriors trying to understand why humans found their own failures amusing, while simultaneously being herded through their own ships by weaponized interior design. Admiral Thompson opened communications again. "Admiral Vextar, we're still willing to discuss this diplomatically. We're not trying to conquer your territory or eliminate your species. We just want you to stop attacking our rescue workers." Vextar's response was increasingly strained. "Humans, your crude tactics cannot defeat Korthak military superiority. We will adapt to your primitive weapons." "I appreciate the confidence," Thompson replied, "but you should know that we haven't actually sent our military yet." "What do you mean you haven't sent your military?" "Well, Admiral Thompson is military, Doctor." Vasquez's voice came over the con. "But I'm a research scientist. Colonel Anderson is technically a civil engineer who specializes in explosive problem solving. Most of our crew are either rescue workers, construction specialists, or what you might call enthusiastic hobbyists." Commander Krexval looked at his sensor readings in growing horror. "Admiral, they're correct. I'm reading crew manifests from their ships. These aren't military vessels. They appear to be converted rescue ships, research platforms, and what the humans classify as heavy construction equipment." "You mean we're losing to their maintenance staff?" "That appears to be the situation, yes, sir." Colonel Anderson had moved on to his next demonstration, a device that had been designed for emergency hull repairs, but which he'd modified to perform aggressive structural counseling on enemy vessels. The Korthak ships found their hulls being gently but thoroughly reorganized into more aerodynamic configurations, whether they wanted to be aerodynamic or not. Dr. Vasquez was now broadcasting human educational programming, specifically documentaries about Earth's natural predators. The Korthaks were learning about humanity's home world, which had apparently produced creatures that considered other apex predators to be acceptable roommates. "Admiral," Commander Krexval's voice was becoming increasingly strained. "The humans have shared documentation about their planet's ecosystem." "Sir, They evolved alongside creatures that they describe as pets, but which appear to be designed specifically for hunting. What kind of creatures? Wolves, sir. Pack hunters with enhanced senses and cooperative hunting strategies. The humans apparently looked at these creatures and decided to make them into companions. Admiral Thompson's voice came over the comm one final time. Admiral Vextar, we've demonstrated that we can redecorate your ships, adjust your crew's psychological state, and share our cultural heritage with you. We're still just the maintenance staff. Our actual military is back on Earth, probably wondering why we haven't called for help yet. The Korthak fleet, now thoroughly renovated and culturally educated, hung in space like a collection of very confused museum pieces. What do you want from us? Vextar finally asked. We want you to stop attacking rescue workers. We want our people back. And we want you to understand that humans are really, genuinely friendly right up until you mess with our people. There was a long pause before Vextar responded. And if we refuse? Then we'll have to send our actual military, Thompson replied cheerfully. And Admiral, you really don't want to meet the people we send when we're not trying to be helpful. The Korthak Empire's unconditional surrender was delivered 3 hours later by Admiral Vextar himself, who requested immediate ceasefire, full reparations for damages to human vessels, and the return of all prisoners. The surrender document also included a formal apology and a request for information about human interior decorating services. The Galactic Council's emergency session was held 6 hours after that. Representative Zerkan opened the session with what could generously be called controlled panic. We have received reports from the Korthak sector that are difficult to categorize. The human fleet appears to have defeated the Korthak Empire using what their own reports describe as aggressive customer service. The assembled representatives murmured among themselves. The Korthaks had been expanding through their sector for decades, conquering anyone who couldn't match their military capabilities. Furthermore, Zerkan continued, Admiral Thompson's after-action report states that Earth Defense Command considers this a minor police action, and that their actual military assets were never deployed. The Altarian representative spoke up. Are we to understand that humans defeated the Korthak Empire using their equivalent of maintenance staff? And that appears to be correct. The human crew manifest includes rescue workers, research scientists, construction engineers, and what they classify as helpful volunteers. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Captain Murphy, meanwhile, was back in Zephyrian space helping to rebuild New Serenity. His rescue fleet had returned to their normal duties, though he'd noticed that other species had become significantly more cooperative when humans offered assistance. Captain Tommy reported from his communication station, "We're receiving a priority message from the hegemony of 6 Tal. They're requesting immediate humanitarian assistance with a mining accident, and they're specifically asking for human rescue services." "That's nice of them," Murphy replied. "Rosa, how are our systems?" "All green, Captain. Though I should mention that our mining lasers have somehow become 40% more efficient since our encounter with the Korthaks. I'm not sure how that happened." Dr. Williams looked up from his medical bay. "It's probably related to my research on stress-induced engineering improvements. Rosa performed significantly better when people were shooting at us." "That's concerning on multiple levels," Murphy noted. "Tommy, tell the 6 Tal that we'll be there in 6 hours. Standard rescue protocol." "Aye, sir. Though, Captain, they specifically mentioned that they've reviewed our service record and promised not to interfere with our operations." Murphy raised an eyebrow. "They promised not to interfere with us helping them. Apparently our reputation has preceded us." On Earth, General Rodriguez was updating humanity's diplomatic status with the Galactic Council. The update was brief and to the point. Earth remained committed to rescue operations and humanitarian assistance throughout the galaxy. However, any interference with human rescue workers would be considered a direct threat to Earth's interests and would be responded to accordingly. The Galactic Council had quietly updated their files on humanity. The classification had been changed from harmless rescue species to approach with extreme caution, friendly until provoked, then see attached behavioral analysis. The attached behavioral analysis was 47 pages long and included detailed psychological profiles of the species that had domesticated wolves, but survived ice ages through creative problem-solving, and apparently treated interstellar warfare like a particularly aggressive form of home improvement. Admiral Thompson was back on Earth, filing his report with Defense Command. "General, the Korthaks situation has been resolved. They've agreed to cease expansion into sectors with human rescue operations, provide reparations for our losses, and participate in what Dr. Vasquez calls cultural rehabilitation programs." Cultural rehabilitation? She's teaching them about human concepts like cooperation, mutual aid, and conflict resolution through shared problem-solving. Apparently, the Korthaks find these ideas fascinating but confusing. Rodriguez nodded. "And their military capabilities?" "Intact but redirected. Colonel Anderson suggested they might be excellent at large-scale construction projects if they could learn to build things instead of destroying them. He's proposed a cultural exchange program where Korthak engineering teams work with human construction crews on infrastructure projects. You want to turn the galaxy's most aggressive military empire into a construction company. General, have you seen what our construction crews accomplish when they're properly motivated? The Korthaks just need to learn that building things is more satisfying than breaking them." Rodriguez walked to her office window, looking out at Earth's orbital defense platforms, which were staffed primarily by people whose official job descriptions included phrases like helpful problem resolution and customer service with extreme prejudice. Her comm unit chimed with an incoming message. "General Rodriguez, this is Captain Murphy reporting from Zephyrian space. New Serenity has been rebuilt, and we're responding to a mining accident in the Sixtal system. Everything is proceeding normally." "Any complications, Captain?" "No, ma'am. The Sixtal have been very cooperative. They sent us cookies." Rodriguez smiled. Humanity had established its position in galactic politics. They were still the friendly neighborhood rescue service. But now everyone understood that humans took their rescue duties very seriously. As she filed her final report on the Korthak incident, Rodriguez included a note for future reference, recommendation for galactic diplomatic protocol, that humanity remains committed to peaceful cooperation and mutual assistance. However, species considering aggressive action against human personnel should be advised that humans are the only known species to look at apex predators and decide they would make good pets. This should be considered indicative of their approach to problem-solving in general. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. They really were as helpful and friendly as they claimed to be. Right up until you messed with their people. Then you discovered why they were the only species that had ever survived being the newest arrivals to galactic civilization, and why their rescue workers carried equipment that could double as weapons of mass reconstruction. The rescue fleet helping hand received another distress call 2 days later, and Captain Murphy's cheerful response to assist caused 3 nearby alien vessels to immediately change course and leave the system. Just to be safe.